Joining me right now to discuss this and the upcoming midterm election is political analyst Larry Sabato of the University of Virginia's Center for Politics, also the author of The Kennedy Half Century, a fantastic book. Dr. Sabato, it's great to have you with us.
I'm delighted to be with you.
All right, so first of all, UVA's Center for Politics has an interesting article showing that control of the U.S. Senate just ahead of the midterm elections is at a critical tipping point. What is the main reason, maybe aside from Obamacare or these specific issues, that Democrats really risk losing control of the Senate in November?
Well, there are two reasons aside from the issues. The first is this is the best map Republicans have had in a generation, at least a generation. You know, people forget only a third of the Senate's elected every 2 years, and it's a different group of states and a different group of incumbents and open seats. And so, you know, it's a crapshoot as to what the map is actually going to look like. This one is terrific for Republicans because the Republican seats coming up are in deeply red states, with one exception, Maine, and Senator Collins doesn't really have any opposition up there. The Democrats have a bunch of incumbents coming up in states that are also deeply red: Alaska, Louisiana, Arkansas, and so on, West Virginia, South Dakota, Montana. So it's a great opportunity for Republicans to pick up those 6 seats they need. And the second reason relates to the first. This is the sixth-year-itch election. Normally, the sixth-year election, the second midterm for the president, is really rocky for the incumbent White House party, and I think it's going to be just that for President Obama and the Democrats in 2014.
Now, up here on the screen, we have the map that you guys have provided for us, Dr. Sabato. I also want to bring in J.D. Hayworth and David Patton as we take a closer look at some of these specific Senate races that you just talked about. We want to start in Kentucky right now, and this is turning out to be a real interesting race. We have Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader, going up against Matt Bevin, who's very popular in Tea Party and grassroots circles. And we've seen some polling information that shows Bevin may be on the head of McConnell at this point. But Dr. Sabato, is Mitch McConnell in real trouble here in Kentucky right now in this primary?
No, I think he will win handily in the primary, and we also have bet on him in the general election, despite the fact that several recent polls have had his Democratic opponent, Allison Lundergan Grimes, ahead of him. The reason's simple. President Obama's popularity in Kentucky is in the mid-30s. Mitch McConnell knows how to run a tough race. And Allison Lundergan Grimes is going to change out Lundergan for Obama as a middle name by November.
Now, David, Kentucky also has one of the few states that you hear brought up by Democrats as a success story when it comes to these state-run exchanges. Do you think, and Larry, chime in after we hear from David answer on this, do you think that she might actually play up Obamacare in this election at all?
You know, I would find that very hard to believe that she would make that. I think Mitch McConnell would be happy to have her make that strategic blunder. One of the things you have to look at, I'm sure Dr. Sabato would have thoughts on this, is not only presidential overall disapproval, but disapproval in the key states. And the further you move south, generally speaking, you start to see President Obama's disapproval drop into even the upper to mid-30s. And so typically the fate of these senatorial candidates hang very closely on presidential approval in a 6-year-itch election.
Yeah, coattails still important in the 6-year, J.D.?
Well, let me tell you, as a guy who was a victim in a 6-year election back in 2006 on the House side, I understand the dynamic at work here in terms of that. But let me ask you, Larry Sabato, about some other Senate races here. We could talk about Texas, and I think the inclination is that John Cornyn, as you, in much the same way you said Mitch McConnell is in front there, that John Cornyn should be comfortable in that Republican primary. I have a little concern about South Carolina. Lindsey Graham and several conservatives challenging him in South Carolina. What is the prognosis for Senator Graham returning to the world's most exclusive club in November?
J.D., that's one we're watching carefully because while Graham is way ahead, he's below 50. It depends on which one of these candidates gets into the runoff with him, assuming there is a runoff, and I would think there would be a runoff. When it's one-on-one, Graham will have to sweat. If he can manage to get 50% plus one in the first primary, obviously, he'll be in like Flynn. But if he's in a runoff, all bets are off.
Yeah, bruising primary in South Carolina ahead, also a bruising primary in Georgia, too, Dr. Sabato. Very crowded GOP field, 3 sitting members of the House of Representatives.
Yes, you have some Republicans who can win a general election, and you have some Republicans who could turn out to be the next Todd Aiken, the Republican who threw away the Missouri seat in 2012. Republicans are going to have to choose wisely there, and people aren't stupid. They do learn from election to election, and I think some people have caught on to what you can get away with and what you can't get away with in order to be elected, even in a red state. By the way, Georgia, watch Georgia. Georgia it's not purple yet, but it's turning purplish. The margin keeps shrinking. I'm from Virginia. I watched this over the years in Virginia. Sure enough, we now have a bluish-purple state. It's the same demographic changes.
Georgia was a heavily Democratic state a long time ago,
Oh, yeah.
Very Republican as of late, but Michelle Nunn running as the Democrat, that name has a lot of cachet to it with her father being the former senator and very strong in defense, a great reputation, although, she's been questioned a little bit, Dr. Sabato, about her charisma and the lack of charisma. So maybe not the best candidate for the Democrats. But I do want to move on real quickly. We also want to talk about some interesting governor's races around the country right now. We'll start in Florida, where we're already getting bombarded with political ads, and the GOP really hammering Charlie Crist for the economy in Florida when he was governor.
Yeah, Rick Scott has got to go after Charlie Crist hard every single day. Scott is not a popular governor. He has got to make Crist's tenure as governor as unpopular as his is. Crist, I tell people, Crist has universal appeal. Democrat, a Republican, and an independent. And on top of that, for Florida, he's well tanned. So, it's going to be interesting to watch that. We have it as a pure toss-up.
Yeah, well, there was some serious reaction to Crist when he ran in Senate. Of course, as everybody knows, he was not a popular guy at that time, and he kind of fell on his face during that Senate race. It would be interesting to see if any of that sentiment remains in the state of Florida as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the label on Charlie Crist and what he has to overcome is that he's not principled, that he's really just a politician. And I think the farther you go into a tough political contest, as he has to make clear each stance on each issue that he's going to take, I think it may be harder and harder for Charlie Crist to keep that mark of being the position-changing politician off of him.
All right, we wanted to talk about the Wisconsin race, but we've run out of time. Dr. Sabato, we'll have to have you back for more of this discussion. We can always talk about elections, and it seems like right around the corner here, we'll be here before we know it, those midterm elections. So thanks so much for being with us, Dr. Sabato.
It was fun. I enjoyed it.
All right, we'll have you back really soon. Dr. Sabato, always good to talk to you. All right, moving on, we're going to talk much more here on America's Forum. We want to hear from you. What do you think about these Senate races? Can the GOP come out of this in better shape, or will these primaries simply be too bruising for the National Party, and it could cost them in the end?